Welcome to the Forgotten Narrator. The forge worlds of the Imperium are cathedrals of industry built on the bones of dying planets. Their skies are shrouded in black smoke, their soil poisoned by millennia of chemical waste, and their cities are endless mazes of metal, flame, and noise. These are not places where life thrives. They are engines of war, heartbeats of the machine god, where humanity is but another cog in a colossus of rust and fire. And yet, billions live on these planets, or more accurately, billions endure. To witness a forge world is to stand in awe of the impossible. Titans rise like steel gods on the horizon. Plasma furnaces roar without end. Trains stretch from horizon to horizon, carrying ammunition, corpses, and raw ore alike. In the midst of this, the human form is frail and absurd, smothered by machinery, burned by heat, deafened by the ceaseless scream of production. Still they toil, day after day, decade after decade, in a place that does not care if they live or die. Survival here is not measured in years, but in how long a person can persist before they are replaced, absorbed, or destroyed. This is not life. This is something else entirely. The air of a forge world is not something that can be truly understood without breathing it in. Though doing so might kill you, it is not air in the sense that we know it, not the clear, crisp breeze of a habitable world. It is a cocktail of chemical particulates, burnt promethium, caustic fumes, and microscopic metal shavings. To inhale it unfiltered is to sign a death warrant, one that may take days or years to fulfill, but will always be carried out in the end. The lungs blacken, the throat scorches, and even the eyes sting from the ever-present smog. The Adeptus Mechanicus considers such conditions acceptable, and those who labor here must adapt or perish. The lowest strata of humanity, those born in the worker habblocks or labor pits, rarely know a single day without coughing. Infants cry their first breaths through stinging air, and if they live past childhood, their lungs will already be scarred. Most wear rebreathers of varying quality, handed down from previous generations or issued en masse by overseers who care more for statistics than for life. These rebreathers are not advanced devices. They are crude filters barely capable of blocking the worst particulates, and they clog quickly. A worker without a functioning unit lasts mere hours before collapse, and even with one, the damage accumulates. Higher castes fare better. Tech adepts and overseers are often granted superior filtration systems, some integrated directly into cybernetic implants. These units scrub toxins with ruthless efficiency and maintain regulated oxygen levels. The difference between life and death on a forge world is often not status or strength, but the quality of your mask. The irony is bitter. Salvation lies not in clean air, but in the machine's ability to mimic it. But not even the best filters can guard against everything. Invisible chemical residues coat every surface. Industrial dust seeps through the smallest gaps. The very walls seem to breathe poison, exhaling decades of stored death with every tremor. And when accidents occur, explosions, chemical spills, gas leaks, the death toll can be immediate and catastrophic. No warning, no mercy, just a wave of invisible doom rolling through the corridors and manufactoria, leaving only corpses in its wake. The most insidious danger, however, lies in time. A human body is not made to live in constant toxicity. Even the strongest begin to fail after years of exposure. Organs weaken, cells mutate, and diseases blossom in shadowed corners of the body where the mechanicus does not care to look. Lung rot, pharaoh throat, gear cough, unofficial names whispered among workers for the ailments that claim them. One wheeze at a time. Few receive treatment. Most are replaced. The dead are recycled into servitor components and their rebreathers passed on. Strangely, some adapt. Whether by genetics, divine irony, or sheer luck, a handful of Forge World natives develop an almost unnatural tolerance. Their lungs become repositories of filth that somehow endure. These people are often feared and admired, seen as chosen by the Omnissiah or cursed by some forgotten techno-heretic. But even they eventually fall. No one escapes the air. Only the augmented, the blessed of steel and cog, can truly breathe without dying. On a forge world, air is not a gift. It is a challenge. Each breath is a gamble, each inhalation a risk. The idea of fresh air becomes a myth, a luxury beyond comprehension. Survival is measured in gas mask filters, in cough suppressants, in how long your lungs can endure the punishment. And when you finally fail, because everyone does, the machine god does not mourn. It merely records your expiration and assigns another to take your place. Heat is a constant companion on a forge world, not the pleasant warmth of sunlight or the cozy burn of a hearth, but the unrelenting, skin-searing intensity of open furnaces, superheated plasma coils, and endless rivers of molten metal. The air itself shimmers with it, distorted by invisible currents of radiating force. Entire sectors of these worlds are so hot that humans cannot survive even minutes without protective gear or cybernetic modification. And even in the more habitable zones, the ambient temperature is often well above what would be considered safe. Sweat becomes currency, and dehydration an omnipresent threat. Radiation is the silent killer. It does not announce itself with noise or pain, but saturates every inch of a forge world with its invisible touch. Old Manufactoria, once sealed but now cracked by centuries of tectonic strain and careless expansion, leak dangerous isotopes into the air and water. Workers who labor near these sites lose hair, teeth, and eventually their lives. Many are never told the cause. There are no warnings, no dosimeters for the poor. Instead, there are whispered superstitions, stories of the glowmen, whose skin peels and eyes burn, who wander into the dark and never come back. Protective suits exist, of course, but they are not for everyone. The Adeptus Mechanicus prioritizes efficiency over compassion. Only the most vital workers, tech priests, overseers, and those directly responsible for sacred machines, receive fully sealed exosuits with radiation shielding. Others are handed threadbare robes soaked in lead dust, little more than ceremonial garb masquerading as safety equipment. It is not uncommon to see workers pass out mid-shift or die outright from heat stroke or internal burns. When that happens, a klaxon sounds, and a servitor arrives to drag away the body. No one stops working. Then there are the foundry zones, vast open spaces where the raw heat of production melts the very floor tiles underfoot. These places are death traps to unaugmented humans. Tech priests here often have replaced their sweat glands with coolant dispensers and layered their skin with ceramic-plated grafts. Their flesh simmers behind steel, eyes replaced with lenses that don't boil in the ambient furnace light. For the baseline human, even a few minutes unprotected in these zones can result in irreversible organ damage. Yet still, the desperate are sent in when a malfunction threatens output. Disposable lives for irreplaceable machines. Some regions fare better, kept temperate through massive climate regulation towers, great humming constructs that stabilize heat and cleanse some airborne particulates. But these towers are rare and failing. Ancient, often misunderstood by their own maintainers, and prone to catastrophic collapse. When one falls, an entire district can descend into thermic chaos. Walls blister, pipes burst, and entire tenement blocks cook from the inside. There are no evacuations, there are only quotas. The long-term effects of living under this heat are as tragic as they are grotesque. Bones calcify irregularly, joints stiffen, and skin becomes dry and cracked, flaking like paint on rusted metal. Cataracts form early, and vision degrades under relentless glare. Children born in these conditions develop with abnormalities, stunted growth, misshapen limbs, or worse. But they are not mourned. They are simply integrated into the workforce, assigned to roles that fit their deformities. There is no room for sympathy, only function. And yet humanity clings to existence here. Through sheer stubbornness or blind faith in the Omnissiah, workers continue. Some even thrive. Those whose bodies are so used to pain that they cease to notice it, who have learned to navigate the smog and steam like blind rats in a maze. They are the survivors, the ones who know where the cool vents lie, when to take shelter from the coolant purge, and how to hold their breath during reactor flushes. But make no mistake, this is not endurance, this is erosion. The heat does not kill in dramatic infernos, but in quiet attrition. It bakes away identity, scorches memory, and leaves only obedience. There are no heroes here, only the burned. In the end, what kills most Forge World laborers is not a single fire, but the unending simmer of a life spent too close to the flame. Food on a Forge World is not nourishment in any traditional sense. It is fuel, gruel, sludge, or dry ration bricks designed to sustain minimal biological function, nothing more. Taste is irrelevant. Nutrition is calculated in brutal efficiency. Most meals come in the form of recycled nutrient paste, produced in towering processors that convert organic waste, processed fungi, vat-grown proteins, and occasionally even ground-up corpses into edible, if not palatable matter. The workers call it corpse slop, not always metaphorically. Water is rationed with even greater cruelty. On some Forge worlds, liquid water is a luxury afforded only to tech priests and high-ranking overseers. For the rest, hydration comes from nutrient packs that contain trace moisture or from industrial coolant condensers retrofitted into crude filtration devices. Contaminants abound: lead, arsenic, promethium residues. Trace amounts poison the body over time. There is no expectation of purity, only volume and availability matter. Feeding times are not breaks. They are schedule-mandated moments in which consumption is enforced. If a worker fails to report to their nutrient station, they are flagged for inefficiency. If they are late, their ration may be cut. The lines are silent, monitored by servo skulls that scan each face, ensuring discipline is maintained. Conversations are forbidden. Joy is absent. Food is something to endure, not enjoy. Long-term survival under such a regime is bleak. The average Forge World laborer begins to exhibit signs of nutritional deficiency by their second decade of life. Teeth rot or fall out. Bones become brittle, breaking under strain. Vision degrades, particularly night vision, as vitamin deficiencies go untreated. Skin grows pallid or gray, and wounds heal slowly, if at all. Scurvy, rickets, and protein deficiency syndromes run rampant. In many HAB blocks, these are simply accepted as part of life. They are not treated, only cataloged. Those in higher stations eat differently, but not better. Tech priests consume synthetic gel supplements, often intravenously. Their digestive systems are atrophied or partially replaced by chemical processors. Food becomes a ritual, a mechanical act of maintaining function. In rare cases, a magos may dine on reconstituted delicacies imported from other worlds: grok steaks, algal soufflés, or nutrient-rich fish. But such meals are for celebration or theological significance, not daily consumption. Malnutrition, despite being widespread, is rarely acknowledged by the mechanicus. It is not seen as failure, but as an optimization problem. If a body collapses from starvation, it is deemed inefficient and replaced. Corpses are often harvested and recycled back into the nutrient chain, their organic matter stripped and reprocessed. It is a perfect system. One where the dead feed the living and the living fuel the machine. There is a dark symmetry to it, a terrible beauty in its total lack of waste. Children raised on this diet grow small and light, their bodies thin and wiry. It is not uncommon for a 16-year-old to weigh barely half what an off-worlder of the same age would. Their frames are suited to narrow ducts, low-clearance passageways, and delicate assembly tasks. But internally, they are breaking. Malformed organs, stunted growth, and chronic illness are common. Most do not reach what other societies would call adulthood. Even among the labor class, there are layers of hierarchy. Foremen may receive double rations. Specialists might be allowed supplements that stave off the worst deficiencies. These privileges are jealously guarded and used to control. Refusing to work overtime? Say goodbye to your salt pill allotment. Showing signs of fatigue? Your protein gel gets redirected to someone more deserving. Food is not a right. It is a leash. Despite this, communities persist. In secret corners of the HABs, among rusted pipes and forgotten alcoves, tiny farms are cultivated. Mushrooms grown in nutrient waste, rodents captured and bred, hydroponic greens clutched like sacred relics. These acts are illegal, punishable by labor purgation or worse, but they are treasured. Not just for sustenance, but for hope. A single fresh tomato can become a legend among the HAB dwellers, passed from hand to hand like a relic of the Golden Age. On a Forge world, food is not about survival, it is about control. The Mechanicus does not feed its population to keep them alive. It feeds them to keep them working. Death by starvation is not tragic, it is calculated, efficient, acceptable. And for those few who dream of more, who dare to imagine a meal not flavored by rust and rot, the Forge world offers only silence. Time on a Forge world does not pass like it does elsewhere. It is not a cycle of days and nights, seasons and years. It is a relentless churn of work shifts, each indistinguishable from the last, defined only by sirens and quotas. The sun, if it is visible at all through the ever-present smog, is irrelevant. Clocks exist only to measure output. Sleep is not a necessity, it is a privilege meted out by the rhythms of production. A standard worker may be assigned to an 18-hour cycle, 16 hours of labor, 2 hours of rest. There are no weekends, no holidays, no days of respite. Some are rotated through 20-hour shifts or placed in deep cycle regimens where they work for 70 hours and sleep for 10. These figures vary across Forge worlds depending on local custom and the urgency of their current contracts. But the constant remains: the human body is pushed beyond its limits, and when it breaks, it is replaced. Sleep deprivation is a silent predator. In the first weeks of their labor, new workers suffer from hallucinations, mood swings, and cognitive breakdowns. Some lash out, attacking machinery or coworkers. Others simply collapse, their minds giving up before their bodies do. Most adapt, if you can call it that. Their brains begin to operate in brief micronaps, seconds of rest stolen during work tasks. Some learn to stand while sleeping. Others train their muscles to move on reflex while their consciousness blinks out. It is a cruel mimicry of life, a shadow play of wakefulness. Chemical supplements are common. Wakefulness serums, stimulants, and nootropics are administered either directly through nutrient paste or injected at daily processing stations. These substances stave off exhaustion but carry a cost: addiction, organ damage, and psychosis. Workers become jittery, paranoid, sometimes violent. Over time, they burn out completely. Their speech slurs. Their coordination fails. They begin making mistakes. And mistakes on a Forge world are often fatal. Those in higher castes bypass the need for sleep through augmentation. Tech priests replace their need for rest with synaptic buffers, neural dampeners, or low-energy standby modes. Their consciousness fragments, operating in distributed awareness while their bodies idle. Some go decades without true sleep, their minds functioning like worn machines, never shut off, always humming, never at peace. The cost is a slow erosion of identity, of self-awareness. Eventually, some cease to see themselves as human at all. The impact on community is devastating. Families do not share sleep cycles. Parents and children often pass each other like ghosts in the corridor, one waking as the other sleeps. Marriages break down, friendships wither. Even language degrades, reduced to gesture and grunt as minds fray under the pressure of ceaseless wakefulness. Laughter becomes rare. Conversations are clipped. Emotional expression withers. Over time, the population becomes functionally mute, a silent workforce that neither dreams nor remembers. And yet, amidst this mechanical horror, some manage to preserve tiny sanctuaries of rest. Illicit sleep dens, hidden in ventilation shafts, shielded alcoves behind broken machinery, padded corners of forgotten storage rooms. Here, a handful of desperate workers might steal an hour of real sleep. They post guards, they risk death, but they sleep. And in those stolen moments, they remember what it feels like to be human. The mechanicus does not care. So long as productivity is maintained, they do not monitor sleep compliance. If errors increase, punishment is collective. Whole units are purged for inefficiency, whether the fault lies with one or many. Fear becomes a stimulant more powerful than any drug. The drive to avoid punishment becomes the heartbeat that replaces rest. Eventually, most workers simply begin to die. Their hearts give out, their brains seize. They fall mid-task and are carried away by servitors, their names already deleted from the system. The question is never whether someone will break, it is when. Sleep is not a refuge on a Forge world. It is a battleground. And in that endless war between man and fatigue, the machine always wins. The Forge world hierarchy is not merely a structure, it is a dogma. A sacred ordering of roles, divinely ordained by the cult mechanicus, rigid as adamantium, and as unforgiving as the Omnissiah's judgment. Every individual, from the humblest grease-stained child scrivener to the highest magos dominus, has a designated function. To stray from this path is heresy. To question it is death. At the bottom of this vast pyramid lie the laborers, faceless, number-tagged, and disposable. Most are born into this caste, never knowing a life beyond conveyor belts and machine hoppers. They are fed, clothed, and housed by the Forge, but only barely. Their purpose is to move, lift, cut, and weld. Many do not live past 30. They have no surnames, only shifts. Their hopes are whispered in rust-choked alleys, if at all. But they are legion, and without them, the world grinds to a halt. Slightly above them are the foremen and overseers. They enforce quotas, ensure compliance, and relay the decrees of the Omnissiah's chosen. Their power is absolute within their domain, backed by electrogodes and execution rights. Some see themselves as benevolent tyrants, others as tools of necessity. Either way, they are feared. To fall under their scrutiny is to risk sanction, reassignment, or worse, transformation into a lobotomized servitor. The tech adepts form the core of the Mechanicus priesthood. Clad in red robes and sacred augmetics, they are initiates into the mysteries of the machine god. They no longer think of themselves as human. Their voices are monotone, their eyes replaced with optics, their limbs mechanical. Each one is a walking testament to the superiority of logic over flesh. They commune with machines, interpret the will of data, and correct inefficiency with cold precision. To them, the suffering of the lower castes is not cruelty, it is statistical inevitability. Above them are the magi, engine seers, datasmiths, and techno-archaeologists. These are the true architects of the Forge world. They design the foundries, maintain the reactors, and oversee the construction of titans. Their word is law, second only to the fabricator general. Most are centuries old, kept alive through massive cybernetic systems. They no longer sleep, no longer eat, no longer feel. Their minds are networks of binary logic and machine code. When they speak, servo skulls interpret their thought streams into audible commands. The lower castes do not see them as people. They are gods in copper and chrome. Between these layers are dozens of microcastes, maintenance acolytes, servo tenders, data engravers, purity inspectors, oil anointers. Each serves a niche function, and their survival depends entirely on the machine god's favor and the whims of their superior. Promotion is rare, demotion is common, and punishment is always public. Servitors occupy a unique space. Once human, they are now fused to machinery, their wills erased, their bodies reconfigured into tools. Some haul cargo, others act as living computers. Their faces are often left partially intact, silent reminders to the living of what awaits those who falter. They do not tire, do not disobey, and do not die until their parts fail. In many ways, they are the ideal citizen. Slavery, while officially condemned by imperial law, flourishes in all but name. Penal workers, debtor units, and captured techno-heretics are bound in perpetual labor. Their bodies are branded, their minds drugged into compliance. They are not counted among the Forge world's population. They are inventory. Yet even within this hellish hierarchy, there are sycophants. Those who worship the system that enslaves them. They paint cogs on their foreheads, whisper litanies to malfunctioning devices, and offer prayers over busted servos. Some do this out of fear, others from genuine faith. The machine god is not a metaphor here. It is reality. And in that reality, survival means submission. Hope is not entirely absent, but it is commodified. Promotions are auctioned with favors, secrets, and bribes. An extra shift might earn you a gear-etched badge, elevating your caste by a fraction. A successful report of heresy could lead to a better sleeping cot. The system devours ambition and excretes loyalty. Those who climb are rarely the virtuous. They are the ruthless. In the end, a Forge world is not built on steel and flame alone. It is built on people, stacked, graded, and measured like components in a machine. Each one plays their part. Each one is replaceable. And in that vast, grinding hierarchy, the only way to rise is to become something less than human, or something far, far worse. The death of flesh is not merely a concept on a Forge world, it is a way of life, or perhaps more accurately, a way of unlife. Flesh is weakness, corruption, entropy. The cult Mechanicus teaches this as sacred truth, and their world building reflects it in every cogwheel and servo arm. To survive on a Forge world is not to cling to your humanity, it is to abandon it, piece by piece, in favor of steel, silicon, and sacred circuitry. The first augmentations are usually forced. A finger lost to a conveyor belt is replaced with a servo digit. Eyes burned by welding arcs become photonic lenses. Hearing damaged by the endless roar of machinery is supplanted by frequency-calibrated auspexes. These replacements are not luxuries, they are mandated. A worker who cannot perform is a liability, and liabilities are corrected, not comforted. Over time, a laborer may find their body gradually devoured by the machine, not out of malice, but utility. For the faithful of the Mechanicus, this is not mutilation. It is elevation. They speak of the flesh with disdain, referring to their former human bodies as shells of carbon sin, or biological inefficiency. Their transformations are ritualized. often performed during sacred rites in incense-filled chambers where cogitators chant the litany of replacement. A tech adept's first augmetic is treated like a baptism, and each subsequent enhancement brings them closer to the omnissiah. For some, death itself is simply the final shedding of redundant tissue. But for the uninitiated, those not inducted into the cult Mechanicus, the process is horror. The surgeries are brutal, often performed without anesthetic and prioritizing function over form. Rejection is common. Infections flourish in the filth of the lower habs, and antibiotic stim packs are handed out sparingly. Some augmentations fail catastrophically. Implants that short-circuit, limbs that seize mid-task, eyes that overload and burn out. When this happens, the worker is scrapped. If salvageable, their parts are extracted and repurposed. Not all augmentations are mechanical. Forge world environments generate conditions that encourage mutation, especially in areas exposed to radiation or warp interference. These mutations are not the flamboyant chaos blessings of demon worshippers, but the slow, cancerous warping of biology under pressure. Extra digits, strange skin growths, asymmetric skulls, often seen as marks of impurity. The Mechanicus despises uncontrolled change. The mutated are either purged or, if functional, converted into servitors, ensuring their aberration serves the machine. Some workers willingly seek augmetics, not out of faith but desperation. A reinforced spine means fewer herniated discs. Respiratory implants mean fewer choking fits. These enhancements come at a cost, often lifelong debt or contractual servitude. But for many, the promise of a few more years of functionality is worth the price. The black market for stolen or scavenged augmentations thrives in the shadows, with rogue techsmiths offering crude upgrades for a cut of labor credits or a promised favor. Over time, many forget what their bodies once looked like. Mirrors are rare, and most prefer it that way. The sight of mismatched limbs, grafted metal, and patchwork flesh is too much for many to bear. In place of vanity, there's pragmatism. How strong is your grip? How long can you hold your breath in a sealed duct? Can your ocular implant track moving targets? Beauty is measured in function. There are stories, half-whispered, barely believed, of those who go too far. Workers who begin replacing healthy limbs with tools, not out of necessity but obsession. Flesh haters who carve their skin with cog runes and bolt steel plates into their bones. They are the self-made servitors, the flesh-purged, the human ghosts trapped in machine shells. The Mechanicus does not encourage this, but neither do they stop it. Such devotion, even if misguided, is still service. Children are not exempt. Some are born into guilds where mechanical alteration is part of coming of age. A 10-year-old might receive a data jack implant on their name day. A teenager might replace their hands with tool sleeves suited to their assigned vocation. It is not seen as traumatic. It is seen as normal, expected, natural. The child cries once, then moves on. In the end, the question is no longer how long can you survive, but how much of you can remain. When does survival cease to be survival and become transformation? The man who once feared the loss of a hand may, decades later, look back on that fear with scorn, because the hand is gone and so is the man. In his place stands something else, something stronger, something colder, something more useful. Disease on a forge world is not a sudden, violent storm, it is a slow flood, creeping through vents and ducts, lurking in grime-encrusted corners, thriving in the damp, the heat, and the rot. It is the inevitable byproduct of a civilization that values machinery over meat. Where pipes are worshipped and people discarded, sickness flourishes like mold on rusted iron. The most common afflictions are respiratory. Rustling is nearly universal among unaugmented workers. It begins as a cough, dry, hacking, constant. Over time it becomes bloody, and finally it becomes silence as the lungs seize and collapse. Then there's gear rot, a necrotic infection of the joints caused by exposure to industrial lubricants and metallic dust. It twists fingers into claws and fuses elbows shut. Ash eye blinds workers slowly as microfibers accumulate beneath the eyelids, scoring the cornea with each blink. There are dozens more, none officially recognized, all whispered between those who still remember what pain feels like. The Mechanicus does not treat disease as a biological concern. Illness is inefficiency. A contaminated cog is replaced, not repaired. Most workers suffering from infections are either isolated or reassigned. If they remain functional, they continue working. If not, they are hauled to reclamation pits, their remains sifted for reusable parts. Medical treatment is reserved for tech priests and vital personnel. Even then, it often takes the form of replacement, cutting away the flesh rather than healing it. Sanitation is primitive or non-existent. Communal lavatories overflow. Waste processing systems clog and backflow. Many workers live in their own filth, sharing living quarters with rats, mold, and decay. Water supplies are often tainted. Skin infections spread rapidly. Fungal blooms infest entire hab blocks, coating walls with choking spores. Entire generations grow up with constant lesions, open sores, and septic wounds treated with lye and rags. The smell is constant, a pungent blend of oil, blood, and rot. Mutations caused by environmental exposure only deepen the suffering. Low-level radiation seeps from cracked power cores and forgotten reactors. It does not kill swiftly. Instead, it warps. Children are born with fused limbs or missing eyes. Adults develop tumors, bone spurs, or nerve seizures. These are not considered medical emergencies. They are defects to be purged or adapted to. Some are turned into servitors. Others are given simple tasks. The truly malformed are disposed of entirely. Yet somehow, disease is not the greatest fear. The workers have learned to endure sickness, to live with pain, to function despite infection. What terrifies them are the outbreaks, when something new, something fast, cuts through the ranks like a plasma torch through flesh. These plagues are rare, but when they come, they are devastating. The Mechanicus responds with absolute ruthlessness. Lockdowns, firebombings, full purge protocols, entire levels sealed and vented into space. No rescue. No cure. One such illness, whispered about in the lower hives, was called the Black Flare. It started with fevers and eye bleeding. Victims would hallucinate, screaming about gears inside their heads, and then combust, literally catching fire as their bodies overheated and broke apart. The Mechanicus never confirmed its existence, but the rumors remain, and so does the fear. In the shadows of the Forge, some claim there are healers, renegade decay, forbidden bioalchemists, even warp-touched savants who defy the Mechanicus to preserve life. They speak of secret clinics, makeshift apothecaries hidden in disused freight lifts or behind false walls. Here, infections are treated with stolen antiseptics, mutations managed with black market gene serums. These stories are rarely true. But in a world of rust and agony, even lies can be a kind of medicine. Disease on a Forge world is not just a physical condition. It is a metaphysical one. It is the body rebelling against its own obsolescence, the flesh protesting its replacement. It is a reminder that no matter how much steel they graft onto themselves, how many organs they replace, the people of the Forge are still human underneath, and humanity inevitably rots. On a Forge world, death does not always arrive by sickness, starvation, or slow decay. Sometimes it comes in a flash of light, a spray of molten metal, or the scream of shearing steel. The machinery that fuels the great manufactoria is as lethal as it is vast, and it does not forgive mistakes. Accidents are not rare, they are routine, expected, even scheduled. The average manufactorum is a monument to risk. Conveyor belts the length of city blocks snake through rows of automated arms that stamp, weld, and cut with unthinking precision. Should a worker fall behind, trip, or falter, the machines do not pause. Limbs are severed cleanly. Bodies are crushed with the indifference of mass production. There are no safety rails, no emergency stops. If a sensor notices a blockage, it sends a maintenance servitor, not a medic. Malfunctions are worse. The sacred engines of the Mechanicus are often millennia old, patched together from salvaged STC fragments and held in place by prayers and oily rags. When one of these ancient machines miscalculates, the result is chaos. Assembly arms swing without purpose. Furnaces overheat. Hydraulic presses activate without input. Workers are maimed, pulped, or incinerated. And the Mechanicus responds not with horror, but with devotion, chanting rites of forgiveness to the machine spirit and blaming the incident on insufficient worship. Automation is a double-edged sword. While many tasks are performed by servitors or automated units, humans are still required for calibration, oversight, and emergency intervention. But automation is fickle. When a servo unit glitches, it might turn on the nearest human. Cutter servitors have been known to wander off script, slicing anything in their path. Loader bots crush workers under miscalculated weights. Even surveillance skulls, corrupted by electromagnetic interference, sometimes trigger purity purges based on incorrect data, spraying flame or neurotoxins across entire work lines. Power fluctuations are constant. Rolling blackouts plunge sectors into darkness, disabling safety protocols while furnaces remain active. The sudden hum of emergency lights is often followed by the smell of cooked flesh and the sound of emergency crews hosing blood from the walls. No one stops the line. The fallen are logged, scrubbed from the shift roster, and replaced by those next in queue. Then there are the structural failures. Catwalks collapse, elevators seize and drop, ceiling-mounted cranes snap their chains. The infrastructure of a forge world is perpetually under strain. Maintenance is reactive, not preventative. When something breaks, it is fixed, but only after it fails. Until then, workers are expected to adapt. A cracked walkway is bypassed with planks. A failing pump is kicked until it hums again. A jammed press is cleared by hand. Those who survive long enough develop a sixth sense. They learn to listen for the telltale whine of an overloaded motor, the subtle tremor before a gear skips. They know which servitors are prone to aggression, which valves will explode when overpressured. This intuition is unteachable and life-saving, but it is never perfect. One misstep, one overlooked vibration, and even the veterans are lost. The mechanicus does not see these deaths as failures. Each body consumed by the machine is a worthy sacrifice. Each malfunction is a divine lesson. The dead are honored not with burial, but by being rendered into grease, organics, or replacement parts. Their blood anoints the gears, their bones fuel the forges. They are not mourned, they are repurposed. And still, people line up for work. Outworlders seeking redemption, penal workers seeking absolution. Children bred in the habs, eager for their first shift badge. They know the risks, they've seen the blood, but they step forward anyway. Because on a forge world, to be still is to be discarded, and to move is to be useful, even if movement means marching into the teeth of a godless machine. The soul erodes on a forge world, not in a dramatic collapse but through quiet attrition. Day by day, year by year, the psychological toll of life beneath iron skies grinds away at the core of what it means to be human. It is not just the labor, the filth, the hunger. It is the dehumanization, the way a name becomes a number, the way emotions are filed away as inefficiencies, the way hope is quietly replaced with obedience. Every child born to the manufactoria is indoctrinated from the moment they can comprehend speech. The litany of purpose is whispered to them in place of lullabies. You are a tool of the Omnissiah. You will serve, you will function, you will be made useful. These mantras are etched into their minds like runes into steel. Joy is a concept of the past. Play is forbidden. Imagination is dangerous. Every instinct of rebellion, curiosity, or deviation is crushed before it can flower. Religious devotion fills the gap where self once resided. The cult mechanicus offers salvation, not through forgiveness or love, but through function. Each prayer is a command line, each ritual a maintenance protocol. The divine is not a distant being, it is the machine itself, the blessed code, the sacred circuit. The more you sacrifice of yourself, the closer you come to divinity. The soul is a processor, the mind a cog, the heart a power source waiting to be replaced. Those who falter spiritually are reconditioned. There are no prisons, no therapy. Instead, heretics are sent to reprogramming wards where their brains are sliced with bioelectric pulses until all thoughts of dissent are burnt away. The lucky emerge docile, the unlucky never emerge at all. The workers call it the scramble. A place where your mind is unscrewed, rewired, and bolted back and backwards. Suicide is not uncommon, not in the theatrical sense, but in the small, silent decisions, standing too close to a press, failing to replace a respirator, refusing to eat. The machine god does not condemn such acts, it simply records the loss and processes the vacancy. There is no funeral, no mourning, only a new shift log. And yet, the mind's capacity for survival is terrifying. Some learn to hide their pain, to store it away like contraband. They create secret identities in dreams, build fantasy cities in their heads, conduct silent operas while wiring circuit boards. Others form micro-communities, tight circles of trust where laughter is shared in code, kindness, and glances. These moments are fleeting, always at risk, but they are real. They are resistance. Some turn to madness as a shield. They invent entire religions parallel to the mechanicus, worshipping broken terminals or imagining servitors as saints. These madmen are often more lucid than the faithful. Their heresy is a scream in the dark, and sometimes that scream becomes a movement, a rebellion of thought, if not action. The most profound cost of this psychological crucible is not breakdown but adaptation. Over time, people forget what it was like to feel. They no longer weep when a friend dies, they no longer flinch at pain. They cease to miss what they never had: freedom, love, identity. They become perfect subjects, silent, efficient, loyal. And in that final transformation, their soul is not destroyed, it is archived, filed away somewhere deep in the rusted halls of memory, waiting for a time when it might be needed again, a time that never comes. On a Forge world, the mind is not a sanctuary. It is a battleground where humanity is slowly disassembled, and the only ones who win are those who lose themselves completely. In the shadows beneath the cog-stamped towers and the endless shriek of production lines, whispers circulate, rumors of those who said no, who ran, who rebelled, who disappeared into the rusted veins of the Forge and were never caught. These are not myths of heroism. They are tales of desperation, of madness, of final gambles against a system that eats people alive and calls it sacred order. Escape from a Forge world is nearly impossible. The orbital docks are sealed behind layers of protocol and purity checks. The skies are watched by patrol drones and surface-to-space batteries. Even attempting to flee invites immediate extermination. And yet, some try. In ancient underhabs, carved long before the Forge was born, labyrinths remain, forgotten transit tunnels, old terraforming shafts, maintenance ducts that lead nowhere or somewhere. Scavenger clans sometimes claim these voids, living off discarded nutrient paste and stolen power, their skin pale from lack of sun, their minds half feral. To the Mechanicus, they are pests. To the enslaved, they are legends. Most do not flee with a plan. They flee in panic, a botched assignment, a punishment order, a sick child about to be recycled into servitor components. They run, through flame-locked doors, across gantries, into cooling tunnels so hot they blister with every breath. Pursuit is inevitable. Servo-enforcers do not stop. Once flagged as rogue, your biometric imprint is broadcast across the entire machine grid. Doors seal, lifts refuse to move. Only the oldest paths, those no longer mapped, offer even a sliver of hope. Rebels are rarer still. True rebellion on a Forge world is madness. You cannot destroy what is infinite. You cannot rise against gods of steel and silicon. But still, it has happened. In the deepest core habs, cults have risen, worshippers of entropy, of the old flesh, of freedom. Some follow forbidden versions of the Imperial Creed, placing the Emperor above the machine god. Others delve darker, calling on warp entities for power. Most are annihilated in days. The Mechanicus does not negotiate. It purges. But for those precious few who escape, who vanish so completely that not even the data mines can track them, life does not become easier. It becomes raw survival. Living off rat meat and rust water. Hunted not only by Mechanicus enforcers, but by rival escapees, feral servitors, and even worse things. Things the Forge forgot, or chose to forget. Creatures of radiation and wire. Echoes of failed experiments. Machine spirits driven mad by neglect. Still, stories persist, of a Forge block in Sector Theta Null where workers collectively revolted, killed their overseers, and now run the lines themselves, producing just enough to go unnoticed. Of a rogue magos who faked the deaths of entire work crews, built them a hidden dome, and now sustains a secret civilization beneath the floor plates. Of a tunnel that leads to an outer airlock and a black market shuttle that visits once a decade to extract the willing. Most of these stories are false, some are exaggerated, but a few are believed with the fierce conviction of prayer. They become myths, passed from one cough-scarred laborer to the next. A reason to keep going, a reason to try. Because on a Forge world, belief is often all that separates the living from the dead. Even failure can be a form of rebellion. The man who shuts down a machine for 5 seconds longer than allowed. The woman who falsifies her shift quota. The child who hides a tool instead of logging it. These are not victories. They are not even acts of sabotage. But they are choices. And choices, in a place where will is a sin, are sacred. Sometimes a body is found, burned, mangled, eaten by machines, but in the corpse's hand is a scratched message. I chose. It is not resistance in the traditional sense. It is not a movement. But it is something. And for those who see it, who find the message before the servitors do, it means everything. How long can a human survive on a Forge world? The answer is both simple and devastating. It depends on who they are, what they do, and how much of themselves they're willing to lose. Life expectancy here isn't measured in years or decades. It's measured in functions, tasks, replacements, sacrifices. And for each caste, each role, the toll is different, but always steep. The lowest run, the laborers, live brief and brutal lives. The average Habborn worker who begins their shift cycles at 12 may not see 30. Their lives are consumed by machinery, their lungs by toxins, their minds by exhaustion. Without augmentations or favor, their survival arc is short and steep, perhaps 15 to 20 years of service before failure. And failure on a Forge world is final. Penal laborers do worse. Already malnourished, psychologically broken, or physically damaged before arriving, they are dumped into the most hazardous roles: scrap retrieval, plasma containment, chemical extraction. Their survival is often a matter of weeks or months. Few last longer than a year. Their deaths are not tracked individually. They are statistical bleed, like lubricant loss or cog slippage. Overseers and foremen live longer, assuming they maintain discipline and avoid sabotage. Their roles come with modest protections: personal respirators, marginally better quarters, some access to Medicaid treatment. Many survive into their 40s or 50s. But theirs is a life of compromise, trapped between the cruelty of the system and the fury of the workers beneath them. When rebellion flares, it is often the foreman who burns first. Tech adepts enjoy greater longevity, though life may no longer be the correct term. From the moment they are inducted into the cult Mechanicus, their flesh is on borrowed time. Each year brings new augmentations, new cybernetic implants. Their biological organs are gradually replaced with superior constructs. Many live for centuries, their minds suspended in data jellies, their hearts replaced with plasma regulators. But theirs is not a human existence. It is something colder. Enduring, yes, but not alive. Servitors are functionally immortal until breakdown. Their minds are wiped, their bodies redesigned for task-specific roles. A cargo hauler might last 20 years before its legs fail. A Medica servitor could function for 30. A sentinel unit patrolling the outer pipes might persist for a century, its logic core only growing more rigid and erratic with time. But these are not lives, they are runtimes. When the servitor fails, it is not mourned. It is rebooted or recycled. Children born in the lower habs rarely survive past adolescence unless they are chosen for a role. Without a shift assignment, they are excess biomass. Some are sold, others vanish into the ducts. Those conscripted into labor at 12 or younger may never make it to adulthood as defined elsewhere in the Imperium. Yet some endure. Bent, broken, coughing blood, but breathing. These survivors are often the toughest, the most vicious, or the most invisible. Magos and senior tech priests defy natural limits entirely. Their lifespans are measured in centuries, some nearing a millennium. Through extensive bionic replacement, neural backups, and cortex cloning, they persist long after their original bodies have rotted. They do not die. They are upgraded. Their consciousness migrates from shell to shell, shedding mortality like dead skin. But their humanity dies early, buried beneath layers of logic. There are outliers. Myths. The old man in Sector F Zeta who's been welding pipe joints for 70 years. The ex-forewoman with 100% shift compliance over 4 decades. The rogue adept who faked her own death and now lives among the rats. These are anomalies, respected, feared, sometimes revered. But they are the exceptions that prove the rule. Survival, in the end, is not about time. It is about transformation. A human can live a week on a Forge world, or 1,000 years. But the longer they survive, the less human they become. They trade flesh for function, dreams for data, identity for efficiency, until finally they are no longer living. They are operating. And in that cold, sacred logic, the question itself becomes obsolete. It's not how long you can survive. It's how long until you become part of the machine. Survival on a Forge world is not a blessing. It is not a triumph. It is a slow unmaking of the soul, a sacrifice carved not in blood alone, but in memory, in identity, in self. Every day lived is a day surrendered. Every breath drawn through a filter mask is a silent testament to suffering. And yet the forges burn on, the titans are built, the shells are stamped, the machine is fed, and someone somewhere survives. But what remains of them? They began as human, born with names, fears, dreams. Maybe once they smiled without guilt. Maybe they had mothers who whispered stories not written in binary. Maybe they imagined more. But the Forge took that, bit by bit, burn by burn, shift after shift. It did not ask, it simply demanded. And in time, they gave. Some surrendered willingly. Believers in the machine, God's promise, eager to cast off flesh in pursuit of purity. Others resisted every step, defiant even as the rust claimed their bones. Most simply endured. Not because they were strong, but because they had no choice. They did not live. They persisted. Like grease in a gear. Like wiring in a hull. Necessary. Replaceable. There is tragedy here, yes, but also something else, something hauntingly profound. The human spirit, though fractured and forgotten, never truly dies. It lingers in secret gardens grown in waste tanks, in the touch of a hand on a dying friend's shoulder, in a message scratched into the frame of a rusted pipe, still here. That is defiance. That is life, even in a place that denies it. But it comes at a cost. To survive a Forge world is to pay with everything. With your health, your flesh, your dreams, your sanity. You become less than you were. Or perhaps more, depending on your faith. Some call it transcendence. Others call it damnation. The truth lies somewhere in the ash-choked haze, between the last flicker of pain and the first pulse of a servo heart. And yet, even as the cogs turn, even as the Mechanicus counts its quotas and files its corpses, we remember. We who tell these stories. We who imagine more. Because every tale of survival is a reminder, not just of what was lost, but of what can still be found. A name, a face, a voice crying out in the roar of industry. I lived. So if you've ever wondered what it costs to survive on a Forge world, now you know. The price is everything. And yet, some still choose to pay it. Thanks for watching. If you found this glimpse into the grim and grinding heart of the Imperium compelling, subscribe to the channel. There's more coming, from the battlefields of the 41st millennium to the deepest vaults of forbidden lore. Stay strong, stay sharp, and remember, the machine god watches.